things that we've never talked about before in the series. So stick around. We will be right back. And the videos. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We have John Spiri with us today from Shiga. You're in Shiga, aren't you, John?
That's right. Yes.
How's the weather there today?
It is miserable. It's very cold. It hasn't been this cold in a long time and raining all day.
Oh, how cold does it get? You said you had a wood stove in your house, is that right?
Yeah, I was tempted to start a fire, but no, not yet. The room temperature is like 21.
Oh, that's comfortable. And I always like more than a week buffer between when I have the fans out and when I get the heaters out. But
That's
sometimes
right.
it's a bit short.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem. I said it about a week ago that we're going to need the heat soon. It was one of those hot days.
Yeah, some of the middle of the days are real hot. Thanks for joining me, Ron. Looks like we've got people from Periscope, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Thanks all for joining. If you've got a question or comment, make sure you type it in and we'll try to fit it in. John, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Would you mind just briefly introducing yourself before we start?
Sure. I was originally born in upstate New York, a small town called Herkimer, and let's see, I went to live in Taiwan in my early 20s for a year, and that was a pretty good experience. And I became more interested in Asia, and I made some Japanese friends. I went back to the U.S. and worked and lived in Vermont, a state that I love. Um, and then in 1997, I came to Japan, and I've stayed here ever since. I've lived in many cities because I was on contract, teaching at universities. So. And now, yeah, I think it's my final stop with my wife, and I have two sons. One is in high school in the U.S., and the other is in junior high school here in Shiga. And we have our own house up near Lake Biwa.
Yeah, you're right above from Ian Davey, who's also in the series, right?
That's right. Yeah, Ian just lives down from me, yeah, down the hill.
Yeah, and you've written for Japan Times. I saw that you wrote about raising bilingual kids, the Japanese school system, as well as beekeeping, which we're going to talk about today.
Yes. When I first came to Japan, I wrote for Kansai Time Out. I don't know how many of you out there remember KTO. It
I
was
know
a
KTO,
nice
yeah.
magazine. Yeah. So I had a series, Japanese at Work. I think it was more of an unofficial, but monthly. An interview was published, just me talking to people about their jobs. So it's kind of fun to be on the other end of an interview because I've done a lot of interviews for that, and then I started writing for Japan Times. I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago, just occasionally, maybe a couple articles a year.
Yeah, I noticed that Japan Times you had about beekeeping, which we're going to talk about today, but you also had Midori Farms. Chuck Kaiser has
Yeah,
also been in the series, so that's awesome to see.
yeah, yeah, right. I've connected with Chuck, and he's one of my teachers. I consider I have different, very knowledgeable people around me, like Chuck and Ian.
That's awesome. That really helps when you can just call someone down the road and say, I'm having this problem, right? Get some
Right.
advice.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Fras says, hello, I'm interested in the beekeeping. I'm here in Tokyo. And Molly says, I dug diamonds there in New York. Are there
Oh,
diamonds in Syracuse?
they call them Herkimer diamonds. They're actually quartz crystals. Um, so that's very near my home, well, my parents' house. So I used to take the kids there when we went back during summer. So yeah, they're pretty nice. Actually, my very first article was at Boston Globe with about diamond mining.
Wow. I
That
had
was that
no
was a long, long time ago.
I had no idea. Molly says, yeah, Herkimer diamonds,
Yeah, yeah, but they're not diamonds. They're
not
quartz.
diamonds.
Yeah.
Mayron says commercial beekeeping. So, no, we're going to talk about beekeeping a little bit later. You weren't doing it commercially, right? It was just
No, 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 no.
kind of like a crazy hobby.
Yes, yes, and yeah.
So let's talk about the mountain vegetable sansai. Is it?
Uh, yes, yes. So sansai is the Japanese word. I guess you could translate it edible plants, wild vegetables. It's something that I'm very interested in, and I researched to write the article. Um, I haven't done it a lot myself yet. One of the issues, of course, gathering it, identifying the plants, and gathering them is the first step. But then, um, you have to know how to prepare them. And my wife is kind of in charge of the kitchen, and a couple times I kind of overwhelmed her with a lot of a certain edible plant, and she wasn't sure what to do with it. So we didn't actually eat a whole lot of them. So uh,
Yeah. You can find them like around this time of year, I think. Don't you find a lot more mushrooms in the forest? Sometimes when I'm hiking, I see people collecting.
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's much more of a spring.
Oh,
I
okay.
think, although there's probably some you can gather in the fall. Mushrooms are a different story. I think Westerners tend to be very, very cautious because there are some enormous mistakes, life and death mistakes that you can make. And, with the doppelgangers, that if one is edible and then there's a poisonous one that looks like it, where, you'll be dead in a short time. I think with plants that, you could get, you know, stomach problems or whatever, but I don't think it's somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not as much life and death issue with the plants.
It always amazed me that is it the mustake mushroom that it's so rare that a lot of people do seek it out in the forest because if they sell it, it's really, really pricey. So they can sell it for quite a lot, right? And have you
Yeah,
ever eaten mustake? And apparently the aroma is supposed to be so amazing.
yeah, I love the matsutake. I don't think I ever mentioned I cultivate shiitake.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so I buy the plugs and I get the wood. And yeah, I put them in the wood. There's really not a lot to it, and then you just find a shady place, and 2-3 times a year I get some good harvests, and it continues for a few years. But like the ones I did 5 years ago are not really producing. Some of the logs have rotted out completely. So, but for several years you can harvest the shiitake. Yeah, I mean you can buy
Wow.
those in a home center, but I buy kind of in bulk and then get my own logs and put the plugs in. I tried matsutake once. It's much trickier, and I didn't get any.
Yeah, I love shiitake too. So beautiful. Just grill it up. Nothing like it. Um, let's talk a little bit about your YouTube channel because that connects to so many of the things that you're doing with raising animals and vegetables.
Yeah.
You've got a Japanese YouTube channel, which is
Yep.
a forest camera. Explain to us how your YouTube channel works.
It's a night sensor camera. So actually, my friend gave it to me a couple of years ago, when I was in Vermont in the U.S. And I brought it back. It's been quite fun because we live in back of our house is the woods. So right after I came back from that trip, the ground out right next to my house was all tore up, ripped up. I thought it was a inoshishi, a wild boar. But I put the camera out there, so that was the first animal I caught. It was a wild boar coming at night. After that, I got several of deer, the video of the deer, and then
I
which
think,
we'll talk about later about the bear. I got a
yeah.
bear in my yard. And then I started taking it up in the woods a little bit to see just what I could find, a fox and
A
a
martin?
tent.
I'd
Yeah, a tent.
never
Japanese say
even
tent.
heard of a martin before.
Yeah, it looks like the weasel, the Japanese weasel, the Itachi. Um, so similar to that. So yeah, I got several wild animals on video. I'm hoping to get more of bears, but it's much more difficult. And I'm trying to be careful about leaving bait out like near my house. I'm trying to put it more out in the woods.
I saw that with the foxes that you had left some bait out, but you said the foxes probably got to your ducks. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. So I was raising ducks, yes, and I believe it was a fox that came in. Of course, that I don't have any image of it, so it was either an Itachi, a weasel, or a fox. But a neighbor had been noticing a fox in the neighborhood when he went for walks early in the morning, and I think an Itachi wouldn't have had to dig as big of a hole. There was quite a hole dug underneath my wood drying shed, and that's how the animal got in. So yes, and killed my. Unfortunately, I had a male and a female, and it killed the female.
Oh.
Um, yeah, because and she was a champion egg layer. The duck laid an egg every day without fail, really.
Um, Mayorun says, I saw the bear and the honey bucks. That is, you really caught the action with the bear killing your honey bucks. Yeah, your
Yeah.
bees.
Okay. So the bear video is like I saw the bees, the box had been thrown, and I knew it was a bear. It had to be a bear. Um, yeah, okay. It was ironically it was a very very windy day too. But I just concluded I just didn't think the wind could do that. The way the box was thrown, and then there was like marks on it too, scratch marks. But it was a very busy couple of days. I didn't have time to really, try to protect the box properly. So I put the sensor camera out. I aimed it at the box, and then the next two nights, the bear returned, and both nights I got it on video.
Yeah, that was, you must have been so sad that your beautiful beehive in boxes was destroyed.
Yeah, I was. You know, beekeeping is tough though, and I had just started, and I was having a tough time of it. And yeah, and that completely ended it. And the bees died off shortly after that.
Yeah, too bad. What in kind of inspired you to start trying your hand at beekeeping?
Well, environmentally, they're so good. I've always felt an affinity for bees. I until I was beekeeping, I never felt any fear at all seeing bees. So I quite like them. I think they're beautiful. So yeah, for those reasons, and the honey, I thought, oh, that would be cool to harvest some honey. And I'm just trying a lot of different things up here in the countryside. So yeah, I decided to give that a try as well. But I mentioned to you earlier, it now made me have a saying that I like to do easy things because beekeeping, it's not something that I would call an easy hobby. Definitely, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I'm happy with like worm farming now, for example.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later. We've had
Yeah.
a few comments about the bees. Mayron says, we have dwarf bees here. Not easy to keep them in boxes.
Mm.
I've never heard of dwarf bees.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What kind of bees were you using?
They were just typical honeybees that I bought. Where did I find the link? Yeah, I found it online, anyways. And part of my thinking was even if I fail, I've supported a beekeeper. They're not so cheap though. But again, yeah, I thought beekeepers have a hard time of it, so it was maybe money well spent in a sense from the seller's point of view, anyways.
Right. In your article on beekeeping, you talk about Japanese bees versus European or Western bees.
Right.
I think the bee farm I visited on Miyajima, which I'm showing right now, he was using Western or European bees. And in your article as well, you say they make more honey. So
Right.
commercially, it seems to make more sense.
Yeah, and there's a couple when I was really researching and going to do this. Some people just you can put the box out and try to like get the bees to colonize your box, and I think that's a very sensible way to do it instead of buying them and having the Japanese bees, yeah, just come on their own. It's very possible then they will leave eventually, but that as a first step, I think, and I know some people who did it that way, just yeah, trying to get the Japanese bees to colonize.
Right. Yeah. In your article, you said one of the people you interviewed said he tries to farm with Japanese bees just because he's lazy, and they're the ones that come.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Uh,
But
I,
what
I
of
can respect that approach.
besides the bear that destroyed your bee farm? What are the usual predators for bees?
Um, I think bears in Japan. There's also an animal called hakubishin. I'm not sure. I don't remember how to translate that. Maybe if someone's out there, you can share the translation for
Isn't
that.
it like a honey badger or
Yeah,
like?
I think that's right. Yeah, it's in that family, and they can climb very well as well. So you've got that. You've got the susumebachi, which are a big danger, a big problem. Uh,
That's the giant murder hornet, if you're not familiar with the Japanese term. That was in the news a lot this year, right? The murder hornet
yeah,
from Japan.
they're enormous. For us up here, it was a year of not too many. There have been
Mm.
years where we have really been inundated with them. I mean, just an incredible amount. But this year, I really didn't see many. This year was the Ashinagi Nagai,
Oh, yeah.
the long-legged
Mm-hmm.
bees. But mites are maybe even a bigger problem. So
Yeah.
they bore into the hives, and uh, it can wipe out a hive very quickly.
Yeah. Phil is saying, did you have issues with Varroa mites?
Those are the problem. I didn't. I should know. I haven't given the whole overview. I only did it for several months, and the bear came and ended it very abruptly. So I didn't have time to be infested with mites. The bear beat the mites to it, I guess. But yes, I had a beekeeper that I interviewed for the article, and he had sent me some strips to. Take care of the problem if you have mites that beekeepers use. So
Yeah, I was surprised. I was talking to the beekeeper on Miyajima and I was asking about organic honey. Is it possible? And he said because you have to put some kind of chemical or he said kusuri medicine on
right,
the hive to keep away the mites that you
yeah,
can
I think that's exactly what it was.
yeah,
Right, that yeah,
that you can't ever really call it organic. That it
yeah,
would be very hard to have organic honey.
yeah. And then finally, another problem with beekeeping or a difficult point is they might just abscond. They might just leave. Um, so my friend in the area, he was very successful. He was doing well. Um, and he was gathering some honey, delicious honey, and then they all just left. And I think he thinks because there were a lot of the susumebachi around.
Ah, right. Yeah, the beekeeper on Miyajima that I talked to, he also battled the Susumebachi, but he said from an environmental perspective, of course, they have a good function in the ecosystem. So he always felt
Okay.
bad when he had to kill them. So,
Yeah.
I think the image is they're just aggressive and they're not useful, but they are, a useful part of the ecosystem. I think in your article, though, you had one of your beekeepers you interviewed, and there were so many of the giant hornets around. That's pretty
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It attracts them. So yeah, and the neighbors, if people out there are thinking about beekeeping, you got to think about your location and the neighbors. They might not be happy having bees around, and also just the Suzumabachi that might come, and also just the greater danger of bear. You know, that's the only time that we've seen a bear in our neighborhood. I mean, they don't uh, come here a lot. I mean, I had heard stories that many years ago they had been spotted, but that was it. And before or after, there's been no bear sightings. So obviously, they smelled the bees, or they knew, somehow they knew about the bees. I don't know how they did it, but
Wow.
the one that it came.
Yeah. Well, that shows that bears do love honey, right?
Well, actually, I think they go for the larva. I think that's, when I was reading about it, that's what they really want. So it's not really the honey.
Yeah. Wow. Um,
Yeah.
Mehran says the dwarf bees are very small bees that can
Right.
tolerate hot temperatures. So maybe depending on your area in the world, different kinds of bees are, of course, more suitable, right? Um,
Yeah.
Frass 2015 says, do you need any permission from local government to do beekeeping?
No, or at least myself and others who have tried it have not. I think we don't need to too. So
Yeah. I visited a New York City hotel, Intercontinental, I believe, right in Manhattan, and they were doing beekeeping on the roof. And that was one of their kind of signature things that they were doing in terms of sustainability, but also to have their own signature honey at the
yeah.
restaurant and stuff. And I thought that was really cool, right in the center of the city.
That is definitely very cool. I actually thought about, in our house we have one section with a flat roof part, and I've thought about utilizing it in some way. So I thought, well, that would be cool to keep the bees up there, and they should be safe. But some people said, well, not necessarily. Like those animals could climb up there. And then also, it's just a little difficult for me to get up there and back, and then all the equipment and what have you. So other people said the only way to do it is put up an electric fence, but I wasn't really willing to take that step.
Yeah. Wow.
So
I mean, you see a lot of electric fences even around the
yeah,
community gardens in Japan. So maybe
right.
that is a good way to keep out the wild animals.
Right. Well, I know like Chuck Kaiser at Midori Farm, they have a problem with monkeys, a big problem with monkeys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He
Yeah. So
was,
there's various. Yeah, we've had some monkeys up here, but it hasn't been a huge problem to me. So.
but you haven't caught any on your video camera yet. We want to see that
Yeah, no,
video.
I
Oh, you
did,
did?
maybe I didn't post it. Yeah, I have some monkey videos. I thought they
Yeah.
were up there, but
Oh,
maybe I
I
need
didn't
to.
see it.
Yeah,
I'll have to check again.
right,
New
right.
York City Arky says lots of people do roof beekeeping in New York.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's really cool.
yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
heard of anybody in New York keeping bees. Sorry, Tokyo. But that's a good idea for the city because if you've got rooftop gardens, um, you need
Right, right.
pollinators, right?
Yeah, yeah. It seems like I'm thinking of another of your guests, John Walsh. Maybe I think he's in Tokyo, and
Yes, he is.
he might know about that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, obviously the roof though. That should theoretically take care of the animal invasion problem. I don't know. Maybe even the mites becomes less of a problem. Yeah, I'm not sure, but
Hmm. I know on the Miyajima farm, I was visiting the bee farm, but next to them was an organic farm. And the organic farmers were saying they had some cross pollination
Mhm.
because of the bees. And so some of the vegetables had variations because of what the bees
Uh,
were pollinating with. And I thought that was so interesting. And so they had such a great relationship, the bee farm next to the organic farm.
yeah.
And the beekeeper was saying he has to be really careful. He can't be anywhere near a traditional farm,
Mhm.
especially rice farm.
Yeah.
He can't go near it just because of the pesticides.
Right. Yeah, my friend who was successful, I think he also feels, yeah, the spraying was a problem. Luckily, they gave him a warning, before they were going to spray, so he could, shut it down a little bit. But yeah, that's an issue.
Right. Frass also says, how do you manage your bees during winter time? They do beekeeping in Sendai on the roof as well. Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
I didn't make it to the winter, so
Yeah. Is Ian doing bees down there?
he was. I think what got his bees? Something got. I think it was the Susumebachi.
Oh, yeah. Well, was it worth trying? Do you think you'd ever try again?
I don't. I feel, yeah, there's just too many things that can go wrong, and there's a lot of other things that, like I said, I mean, it just kind of aiming for things that are a little bit easier. Um, that yeah, there's issues with the neighbors. I think would come up, and being near the woods. I watched a lot of videos at the time, and it seems like a lot of people showing, on YouTube the videos about beekeeping. They're kind of in, I would call it farmland, like a big open field. My friend in Vermont, he's kind of like that, has a big open field area, but I'm right next to the woods, and I don't think that's ideal. Um,
Yeah, I wonder. Anyway, you prefer raising worms. So let's talk about the worms.
yeah, I just searched online and I found a man or an organization selling them in Japan, the composting worms, and yeah, it's been pretty easy. I had an old bathtub that I saved uh, because I usually old things like that, I end up finding a use for them. So on Chuck's advice, I split it into two parts. So I have two populations split just by a piece of wood, and of course there's the drain, and so the rainwater goes through, and then it goes into a bucket, and then it's it's very good fertilizer for the garden. So I use that rainwater, and then basically I just feed it the raw kitchen scraps. So of course it has to be shared between my chickens and the worms. So and then it just occasionally I harvest the soil. It's very rich, dark soil. Um, Looking online on the different videos, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Mine is kind of time consuming. I just open it up to the sun and let the sunlight hit, and then the worms will go down deeper and avoid that, and then harvest the top layer of the soil that's in there. So just maybe every 3 months or so, harvest that soil a little bit.
Do you ever sell your worms or sell your compost to other gardeners or
Yeah, I don't think it's
trade?
large scale enough, but I'd like to, maybe a first step before doing that would be to share with all my gardening friends, around some of that fertilizer or, yeah, the soil. Day
Hmm.
like today, though, the bucket's just overflowing. It's just too much water going through there.
Right, yeah. Do you think you needed to buy the worms or you think you would naturally have the worms? Was it useful buying the worms to get
Yeah,
started?
because it's a different type of worm. Um, so what is the distinction? A regular earthworm, you could probably, they're good for the garden too. Um, but the composting worms, I think, because they're consuming the compost, and it's their poop that is providing the fertilizer. So yeah, I read it that those are better worms to get for your garden. So yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to Thomas Klepper, who runs an organic farm down here in Hiroshima, And I was trying to get some compost for him for his farm because he was really into making more compost. And so at our monthly Riverside cleanups, I was telling people to bring their kitchen compost. Nobody
Mm,
did. It's kind of it's gross, right? People are like, I'm not gonna bring that. That's gross. But
right.
when you see how amazing it is for your garden, growing vegetables.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have huge compost bins. Um, it doesn't, they don't get fed a lot of food scraps. So it was kind of my own idea way to do it. I mean, I get a lot of grass clippings. My neighbors also give them to me. So I put a lot of grass in there. And then, of course, you should mix that with the brown, like leaves. But where I'm at, there's woods, but mostly they're soft woods. So I don't have a lot of leaves, and when they are, they're hard to gather. So what I did was I gathered rotting wood from the forest and put layered the rotting wood with the grass clippings and just huge piles of it. And yeah, I left it there for like 4 months, and then after, yeah, I sifted through there and got a lot of buckets and buckets of compost, finished compost that looked beautiful, and I just added it a couple weeks ago to my gardens.
Oh, wow. Great. Kyle H., I can't pronounce his last name, who runs a permaculture center in
Yeah,
Okayama. He gave me some advice because I'm always struggling with weeds. And he
yeah.
said he's heard of people just putting cardboard down and then all compost layer. And then by the next spring, you don't have any weeds and you've got all this beautiful soil ready to work with. So I might try
Is
that.
that like in the garden you're
Just
saying,
in the
or
garden, yeah, because I'm constantly struggling with weeds. So instead of tilling the soil and bringing up all the
right?
weeds, just laying down cardboard and then a layer of compost. You would need a lot of compost, but
Yeah, I put a lot of cardboard in my compost. Uh, so and then that just composts as well, so I don't send it for recycling. I just recycle it here. So yeah, cardboard is fine in the compost as well. But yeah, weeds, I don't know, there's a lot of theories online. I guess I should try different things because it's a bother. Plants are tenacious. They're kind of unstoppable. I think weeds and plants, they're
yeah.
amazing. That's just
We just have to change our mindset about weeds and start eating them
yeah,
more and then
right. Yeah,
they
yeah.
won't be weeds. They'll be something we want, right?
Right, right. So going back to like the bonsai, I mean, one of my gardening senseis, um, he recommended like just opening, a patch, and then, you know, if you can recognize the weeds that are edible, just keep encouraging them to stay and getting rid of all the other ones, and then eventually you just have basically a garden of bonsai, of wild vegetables.
That's awesome. I love that sansai, the green one that has a really curly top, and
Yeah,
they put it into tempura
yeah,
sometimes. I really
that's
love that
right.
one. I don't
Yeah,
know the name.
yeah,
Molly
it's like
says,
fiddle thing, fiddle.
yeah,
Yeah.
something. Molly says in Pennsylvania, the apple growers rent hives from beekeepers for pollination.
Mm, interesting.
That is interesting. And she also says a friend uses red worms in her compost area.
I wonder where is that in Japan? Somebody based
No,
in
no,
Japan?
she's in the
Ah,
States. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure where you would get redworms, but yeah, yeah. The composting worms. Maybe that's even their official name. I don't know. They're much smaller than an earthworm,
They look smaller. They look
and and,
thin.
and they're reddish. They're reddish too. So maybe you saw the images I sent.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm showing it right now.
oh, okay.
They
All right.
look really thin. Thin red
Yeah,
worms. Yeah.
they are. They are, and they can really multiply. Like I can go in there after a week or so, and yeah, I've noticed the certain things that are good to do, like the watermelon, putting it down with the hard outer layer at the top, and things like that. They love. They'll just eat it down to nothing.
Wow. It's so fun to see it disappear too.
It is. It is. Banana peels too. Banana peels are great. Even the chickens eat the banana peels as well.
Yeah. Well, do you have to we'll segue into chickens next. Do you have to keep the chickens away from the worms? Wouldn't they eat the worms?
Um, yeah, they don't really have access. They would eat the worms. They eat a lot of insects. They love grubs. When I find grubs, like when I was going through my compost, there was all kinds of grubs, and that's what they love. They go crazy to get those insects or grubs like that. So
Yeah. Molly says, I refer to the weeds in my garden as naturalizing. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
And she said the worms in the picture that I just showed of your garden is what her friend's worms look like. So
Okay.
even though it's in a different country. Interesting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us about your chickens.
All right, should I start like how? Yeah, I'll try to not drag it out too much because I just was interested in raising birds, and I started with the ducks. And I had read the eggs are more nutritious, the duck eggs, and yeah, I think I had more of an affinity for ducks as well. So I had the two ducks, and then I added, of course, the two ducks. When you buy them, you don't know if they're male or female, and even when they're selling them, they don't know, they can't say. So, and I ended up with one male and one female. So I wanted a little more. So then I got some chickens, including a unique breed called Chabo. So, and then I kind of was always thinking about possibly breeding. So I had a rooster along with some hens. So what happened? Let's see. The rooster kept attacking me. He was a beautiful bird, but he was very territorial or whatever. I tried everything I could think of. He was very aggressive, and it's not fun when you go out there and you really got to watch, or he's going to launch an attack. One time he put a big bruise on the inside of my knee. So when I lost the Chavo, I was in the U.S. and she died like the last day, the day before I came back. It was very sad. So then I gave the hens and the rooster to a neighbor. So then I had just had the two ducks, the male and the female duck. That went very well because that duck laid, like I said, every day. She just didn't miss. It was a very nice, delicious egg, and it was actually enough because my wife developed an allergy to eggs, so it was really just for me. But then, the fox came and killed the duck. Then I bought three more ducks, and they all turned out to be male. So that was some bad luck thrown in there. And then I wasn't sure what to do with four male ducks because I had the one left over from before. So a neighbor said, "Oh, my friend would love to have them for his garden, like just fertilizing his garden." So I ended up giving them away to her, or actually her friend. And then I kind of started over again, and I have a few regular hens, the brown hens, but then I found there's a website that your listeners might be interested in, pethome.jp. And if you want any kind of rescue animal, any kind of animal is on there. It's nationwide throughout Japan. You just have to put in your region. I think it's pet-home.jp is the URL. That's where I got my dog as well. So I found their roosters. Roosters are easy to get. Everybody's giving away males. It's much more difficult to find any kind of female bird, egg laying. Anyways, I don't know about the other kind. So I got the silky. So in Japanese it's ukoke, and just because it was available, and the man said, "Oh, they can breed with the regular brown ones." So I had the silky rooster with the four brown hens. I'm not sure that they would really breed. I didn't see any action. I don't know. It didn't seem to be happening. They were kind of happy together, but then I bought some young silkies because I thought, well, isn't it better to have the silky hens? So I bought them very young as chicks. I raised them, and they're just coming of age now, laying eggs. So since then, I've separated because the problem was, birds can be bullies, and they didn't really uh, they wouldn't accept the silky hen, the small white ones. So I separated them, and I had to separate the male silkies. So the three silkies, the male and the two females, are together on one side of my house, and the other side I have four brown hens.
Wow. Well, we got some comments here. Frass says, I'm so happy to see this. It gives me hope. I hope I can live somewhere I can do all this, growing animals and compost, living organically here in Japan. Where do you get your ducks and chickens? So I think the website that you just told us, pet-home.jp, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's where I got the rooster. Most of the ducks I got from it's called World Bokujo, and it's in very rural Osaka, way in the mountains of Osaka Prefecture. Um, yeah, I hesitate a little bit. I mean, the people there are very nice. Um, I don't think in terms of animal rights they're really up to the up to the year 2020. Um, a couple of things I saw, the animals they have on display, I didn't find that appealing. For example, like this gorgeous horse, and it was just basically chained. Its legs are chained all day,
Oh,
and they have a monkey in like a costume, something you might have seen. I mean, I don't know, like, is that so? It's not so cruel. The monkey probably has a good life. I think Westerners though look at that and just like, nah, I don't need to see monkeys dressed up as a
yeah.
person,
It's
So
if you don't like zoos, you wouldn't like that, right? Yeah.
right.
Uh,
So
sorry, Wendy is asking about geese. Any plans
yeah,
for geese? And did you order your ducks and chickens from somewhere? So we're talking about where you got it.
yeah,
But have you
yeah.
ever thought about geese as well?
I haven't really. Yeah, I think just having the ducks felt fine, and I've never seen the geese for sale. The World Bokujo, they sell many different kinds of birds that you could raise. Some of them are quite expensive. So that's also where I got the silkies. So I bought this. It's not easy
Wow.
finding a place to buy birds though. Even just your standard egg laying hen, you kind of have to ask around. I did a lot of internet searches. It was very hard to find. Nothing can be sent. So wherever you are, you have to find a place that you can drive to and pick them up.
I
So
see. Because
one thought is,
you can't mail live animals,
that's right, they can't be mailed.
but they
So,
can mail live koi. I've seen the
oh,
koi
is that right?
fish live shipped from Japan to Hawaii. They can
Wow.
do that, but they can't within
Yeah.
Japan. That's interesting. Molly is saying we're allowed 6 chickens, but no roosters in Pittsburgh because they're noisy. She adopted 3 chickens from a humane shelter. So that's interesting in the States as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
of course that's a danger of the rooster. Yeah, I'm very rural here, but yeah, the biggest complainer is my wife about the rooster.
yeah. Wendy says it would be great to get the name of the place in Osaka to get poultry in the comments here.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
we'll try to add it in the comments below. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And Frass says exactly not easy. I know my dad in Hawaii was really trying to hunt for the rooster in his neighborhood because
yep.
it was crowing rooster. What do
Mm,
cockadoodle do? What is it called?
yeah.
All night, not just in the morning. All night. It was making
Well,
him crazy.
there are some things you can do. Like if you got a rooster, what you would want to do is keep it in the coop and make it very dark and close it up completely so they can't see any light. Of course, it's going to vary bird to bird. Like mine right now get the sunlight very early, and they're as soon as it gets light. I wake up very early though, so it doesn't bother me. But neighbors here, I think most people, get up pretty early. So
Wow, interesting. And so it's only you that's eating the eggs. About how many eggs are you getting?
Well, right now I have a surplus, so we give them away, which I kind of like, having extra to give away. I get usually three from my brown hens, and then uh, a couple a day from the silkies. So the silkies, I'll just add about the birds. See, the brown egg laying hens, they've lost the behavior of what's called broody. Now, I didn't know this word before. Broody is when the hens just start sitting all day, every day. And that's how the eggs get hatched. Well, that's one way. The other way is an incubator. But a fertilized egg, if you want to hatch it naturally, the hen has to get broody and just you know stop doing everything and just sit. Now, of course, my theory is farmers have bred that out of most typical hens, so they don't get broody. Because if they're broody, they're not laying a lot of eggs. So the silkies, though, have not lost that behavior, so they still get broody. So that's why they do lay fewer eggs in the course of a year. But if you want to breed, the beauty is they do it all themselves. So not only the hen will get broody and then sit on the fertilized egg, and then after they hatch, you don't have to raise the chicks. They take care of the chicks entirely. That is very appealing to me too. So it's just, yeah, it's much easier.
That's interesting. And you were talking about sharing your kitchen scraps between the compost pile and the chickens. Do they basically eat anything from your kitchen?
Um, yeah, I mean, I choose the things they like. Yeah, maybe not anything. Like I never give them citrus or onions, things like that. What they love best is the dashi, the fish stock for miso soup. So we have that most every day, and they go crazy for that. Um,
Wow,
and
that's
and then of
interesting.
course, yeah, they'll even eat banana peels. Like I said, banana peels are amazing. Or yeah, so I have to decide who gets what. So because they're in different locations, so um, I split it all up.
Yeah. Thomas Klepper, who's been in the series, our organic farmer in Hiroshima as well, he moves chickens around in like a crate around his farm so that they scratch up the dirt and they fertilize, and then he moves it to another area. So he uses it very methodically.
I like that idea, and I probably should try it. People say they're great for the garden, but when you have young starts in it, they destroy it. They dig up the garden as well. So
Yeah.
So like
Depends
right
on
now
your.
I've reduced their because they free range usually my hens, but lately I have to kind of keep them in longer and I only let them out late in the day because they just keep getting in my garden and digging up everything.
Wow. Molly says, do your chickens lay eggs in other places in the yard or only
Uh
in the coop?
yeah, only in the coop. So they've been good. They make like a little nest, and I've read online that sometimes that can be a problem, but it's been fine. In the beginning, I had problems with crows stealing the eggs, but I have it very much more secure now, so the crows don't go in that area at all. So yeah, they always lay in the same place.
Ah, nice. Interesting. I think do you also eat your chickens after you raise them?
Um, I don't. Um, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you, because we do eat meat here. And to me, what makes sense is to give a bird a good life and then consume it, as opposed to supporting factory farming. A bird that might have a miserable life, but almost certainly has a very very poor life. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, I've just been so small scale, and I have complete resistance from my family, and yeah, so I haven't taken that step.
But that leads us to our next topic about hunting. Tell us how you got interested in hunting and what your philosophy is on that.
Yeah, well, when I was in Kumamoto, I had a colleague who was a very keen hunter. He still is. So, I mean, I'm like most Westerners in Japan. I'm quite on the left, and hunting is just something that for a long time it was not really imaginable. Although it might be interesting. I actually had a license when I was 16. I went out with my father. I think 16. I was young, but it was more my father's idea, and I just was kind of I would say an obedient son, and he wanted to go and he took me, but I wasn't into it at all. And I remember very well my father and his friend killed a rabbit, and I looked at it and I had a strong realization, like I'm done. And I think my father knew it, at that moment. I just said, I'm never going to hunt again. So yeah, and that's the way it stayed for I would say a few decades. But ecologically, when you start thinking about it, it's an infinitely renewable resource. So I think there's a strong argument to be made that yeah, for ecologically speaking, it's a good thing. And you've got in Japan, especially like deer and inoshishi, overpopulated. Now, saying overpopulated can be controversial. I mean, it depends on how much land is saved for the animals, whether it's overpopulated, and there's a lot of issues. Are humans overpopulated? I understand all that, but I would say I think in the U.S. too, the people fighting to keep wild areas wild for animals are really the hunters, because they want they don't want humans to encroach on those game areas. So the ecological, and then if you just combine it with the fact that I am eating meat, anyways, and it just seems a preferable way to eat meat. And I guess just one more personal comment is I love being part of the entire process of whatever it is. So in my classes, I love making all my own materials and my own textbooks as a teacher, just being a part of the whole process. So it's the same thing with food, which is why I like gardening. I just love planting the seeds and watching them grow and then harvesting them. So that appeals to me too, to be more intimately involved in the process of hunting. And I guess I love nature, and I know it might seem like a bit of a contradiction, but I think what I want to do, and I just passed the test just for people to know. I haven't hunted in Japan. I don't even have the license yet, but I have the paper that shows I passed the test. Um, I want to participate in the natural world, fully in that world. I feel like it would be a really cool experience to enter the woods as a predator, trying to get food for myself and my family, and really, yeah, friends too. So
I mean, you're not the first person in the series to use the food of hunters. And Kyle, they take the inoshishi meat from hunters in their area because the hunters say they would just throw it away otherwise. And if I agree with you, if you're going to eat meat, eating game is more sustainable
yeah,
than than choosing factory farmed meat, you know?
right. And whatever the health arguments are, about meat. I mean, some say it's not healthy, some say it's healthier. I think if you're just comparing meats, I would rather have wild game. I think it would be much healthier. I think it is much healthier than factory. Whatever they're feeding them, antibiotics, or they're just not terribly healthy animals either, as opposed to an animal in the woods. So
And
yeah,
I've never met a farmer who didn't want hunters to come and get the inoshishi because they
right.
destroy their farms.
Well, especially
Um,
the inoshishi they cause huge damage, agricultural damage. Yeah, I'm a little surprised though they don't eat them. I don't know how common that is. I know in the U.S. Sometimes there's a law that if you kill it, you have to eat it. You can't
that's
leave it
better. It
legally.
seems like a
Yeah,
waste to just kill for
yeah,
sport. But
yeah,
people,
it does.
some people like to do that, I guess. Phil says, did you get the trapping license or did you go for the shotgun license?
Um, I went for the hunting. So it's like Daiichi, the hunting license, so the shotgun license. Of course, the shotgun license, though, I guess I still have to pass a gun test. So in order to have a firearm in Japan, and that's separate, I think that's run by the police authority. So I have another big hurdle to overcome before I could really get in the woods. So I took the trapping test for the first time just like a month or so ago, and I actually failed that portion of the test, but I passed the hunting, for the gun hunting portion.
Are there certain areas that you can hunt and not hunt? I do hikes a lot of the time, and sometimes I see the hunters out there with their dogs, and I'm like, wait a second, are you shooting around here? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? You know?
I have to learn that too. I trust that. Yeah, at some point I'll get to that step. I hear shots like right around my area at times, but I think I'm definitely committed to complete safety. That friend, it's a Canadian guy from Kumamoto. Yeah, I mean he emphasized just you have to remember a lot of principles like the direction you're shooting in, and you know if you follow the guidelines or actually the rules, the laws they give you, yeah, it's going to it should eliminate actually not just limit but eliminate the danger for others if you follow the rules.
I would hope so. Molly says a lot of hunters here donate the meat to food banks. That's a good way
Yeah.
to reuse. What are the requirements? Frass is asking about getting the license.
Um, well, you have to pass the test.
So is it a written test?
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, the test there's two parts. The paper test, of course, in Japan, this is challenging. They don't have an English version, so you got to do it. I'll say though, I'm Nikkyu. My kanji is not that great, but I mean I can read some. But as you study, you're really getting the same kanji are appearing a lot. And something I learned by studying, it took me 3 tries, by the way, so I've passed it on the third try, is that you have to nail the ones that are not heavy involved in kanji. So, for example, there's a lot of questions about what gauge of a firearm would you use to hunt this particular animal. And those are something that it's really easy. You can understand the question pretty much as easily as any Japanese. Make sure you nail all those. You got to have 100% because there's going to be some long-winded questions that have a lot of kanji in them that are going to be much tougher for a non-native speaker. So there's the paper test, which is very all kanji, and then there's a practical part of it. That's part two. It's actually relatively easy as long as you go through. They have a day course. So in Shiga Prefecture, there's the Hunting Association, and they offer a day course about handling a gun. So there's 7 stations, and once you've gone through that day, well, that part of it is just a half day. It's not that hard. Mostly, it's just like checking checking that there's no bullets left in the gun, not pointing it, at anybody, pointing it down properly. So yeah, I think that part's relatively easy.
Oh, interesting. And then, yeah, is there like a gun safety section as well? Besides, don't point it, but do they actually teach you how to shoot?
Um, no, not as part of the testing process. I mean, that would have to be another challenge because I haven't touched a gun really since I put it down when I was 16. So I would have to go. I think they have the ranges where you can go practice shooting. So I would definitely need that, but it's not part of the test. Yeah.
Yeah, because you would hope someone hunting would be at least fairly decent at getting its target and not being
Well,
off
yeah.
target.
No, that's right. Well, that's why too. It's very important that the animal is in a very comfortable range because if you're going to wound it, then you're going to feel terrible because that animal you're not going to get it, and it's going to slowly bleed out or something in the woods. So you really want to make sure that you get a clean kill. So
and do the animal the service of killing it in a humane as possible, I would hope. Something about
Right.
how do you treat the animal. But I think in terms of the philosophy about eating meat, you often see Japanese people at restaurants insist on finishing the last grain of rice as well as
Mm.
finishing the fish or finishing the meat because they appreciate that that was a life. And I really respect that's a more honest way to eat.
Yes, yes, I think so too.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything up and coming that you'd like to challenge besides the things you've talked about
Uh-huh.
already?
Well, I have to learn to go deeper into things, but yes, I think about raising insects. One reason would be to feed to my birds. As I said, they really like the protein, um, with the grubs and everything else. And I mean, I've read you can even ground it into flour. I have no problems eating insects, and I know the United Nations has recommended countries to take up insect farming more for food as human food because ecologically it's much better and they're easier, certainly easier than farms raising chickens and whatnot. So um, that's something I've looked at, and I've looked at different sites, and I've thought about just trying to get started breeding and raising, yeah, insects for food.
I've heard that as well. And there's a lot of countries that do eat insects. And, there's no reason that that couldn't be a very sustainable protein to add to our diets. You just
Well,
have
even
to,
Japan,
yeah.
they have yeah, I can't remember what they're called, but there's different traditional insects that are eaten even now.
I haven't seen any in the stores, but I'll have to keep my eye out for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're in stores, but that people sometimes eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for talking on the series today. That was really
That
interesting.
was my pleasure. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for your awesome questions and comments. And tomorrow, again, 5 o'clock, we will be talking about a year having a Tesla. So, driving an electric car in Japan tomorrow at 5. Fras has one last question. How about rabbits?
Yeah, when I was a woofer, a willing worker on organic farms in New Zealand many years ago, and I stayed. My favorite place. They were German immigrants in north of Auckland, and yeah, that was one thing. They were really trying to be self-sufficient, and they raised rabbits and ate them, ate the meat. So it's not something I've really thought about. It seems like the main purpose would be right to get the meat, and yeah, that seems like it would be a big step, and they're not that big and everything. So I haven't really thought seriously about it, but yes, that's another way people can go.
Yeah, just be honest with your kids if you serve rabbit. That's the reason I became a vegetarian as a kid. My dad said it was chicken and it was my pet rabbits. And I made a
Oh no.
connection, made a strong connection between animals I love and things on my plate.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no, no, I would never try to pull a
Just be
fast one.
honest about it, and
Yeah,
then let your
yeah,
kids decide.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Molly says, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Have a
Yep.
good day.